Yes. So I will call the meeting of the Board of Civil Authority to order. And Jude, I'll ask you to introduce yourself since you are appearing remotely.
Sure, I'm Jude Newman.
Excellent. We'll all try to keep our voices up to be heard over the machinery. And we have on our agenda item 4 to affirm the rules of procedure. We've not circulated those rules, so I've deleted that from tonight's agenda. And we have item 6 to assign inspection teams. And I'm not sure how we'll do that. We might do them as we do the individual properties, not as a separate item. And
If we need to do the individual properties,
sorry,
we may not need to do the individual properties. Conversation.
Yeah, sorry, I can't. I didn't hear
you
you.
didn't hear what I said or what John said? Okay. What I said was that item 6, assign inspection teams. We may do that as we do the individual items, not as a separate agenda item.
And I was just mentioning, I don't know how you all will want to proceed, if you'll want to go, item by item, or if it's just a sort of collective presentation. But, whatever.
A little bit.
A little both.
That's what I figured. And so having done that, having made those adjustments, can we proceed with the agenda as proposed? All right. Hearing no objection, we can go forward. I will ask anyone who's going to be testifying, which is presumably Marty and Jesse, to raise your right hand. And you too, Liam, okay? Do you solemnly affirm, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury, testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Liam, do you want to start us off with how you want to proceed? Or just
be sure.
Good evening. Let me introduce myself. My name is Liam Murphy. I'm with MSK Attorneys in Burlington. First, thank you all for giving up your summer evening to be here as volunteers. Our town governments don't run without volunteers,
Yes.
and we really do appreciate you coming and participating. We have the primary issue applies to all of the properties, and we do have also some individual sheets that we can give you, but in general, our presentation really applies to everything, and we're willing, I think it's best to maybe if we can just discuss that big picture first, and then we can then go on individual properties. I don't know if Marty wants to go first and make a presentation or not.
go ahead.
Okay, so as you know, the city of Montpelier underwent a citywide reassessment that became effective as of April 1st, 2023. And in that assessment, properties, probably all your properties and all the commercial properties were reassessed. We appealed many of the assessments that were in the Jacobs family related properties, primarily because there is a dispute about when the assessments were done. This company came up with what they considered to be projected rents for the units, and we felt that and projected expenses, and they were just not realistic for the units that were actually being rented. And we have shared the actual income expenses of every building, and to show that that the projected income and the projected was too high, the projected expenses were too low. And then there's something called a capitalization rate, which is how properties are generally valued in the commercial real estate market, that somebody takes the net income and figures out what their return on their equity will be in order to come up with a price. And we had a disagreement about that. All of those things are still under appeal, and we're having some hearings on that. But that was a few months before the floods of 2023. And therefore, those assessments were for properties pre-flood. We're now in 2025. This appeal is what a evaluation of the properties effective as of April 1st, 2025. And our general position is that the floods of the commercial properties have had an effect. There's just no doubt in anyone's mind that no one is going to buy these properties at the same value that they would have bought them pre-flood, knowing that the properties have been flooded 3 times in 20 years, and there are no substantial changes in the water courses, and in fact, the chances of climate change are such that it's potentially more likely. So I think any one of you would, if you were going to buy a house and you knew that house had been flooded 3 times in 20 years, and even though there have been it might have been finished, renovated after the flood, that you're going to pay less for it. There's a risk factor there. And that is what our primary situation. And unfortunately, in the time since the floods, there have been very few properties that have sold. But that, we think, is an indication of the commercial problem. Is there are 2 properties that have sold that were, we call all these flood affected properties, commercial flood affected properties. 148 Main Street, State Street. And we have, I think I made enough, I hope. There's a listing of that property and the sales price. I gave away my the list of the list of assessment, yes. So prior to the
And we have enough. Do you need it, Marty? Do you have more?
I don't, I made 10 and I apologize. I didn't believe there would be, I didn't think there'd be more than that. So the city assessed this property at 148 State Street in the reassessment at $648,000. It was sold for $345,000. So it was sold at a $300,000 less, almost 50% of the value of what it was assessed by the city before. This is what
This is ours.
So when purchased, a lot of the renovation work had been done on this. This was not fully, it wasn't fully complete, and it was bought by Jesse's family and Jacob's family, and there was approximately $90,000 more of work to be done to bring it back up to fully renovated. But the value of it, if is still, 40 to 50% below what the city assessed it. Then there's a second property at 146 State Street. This property was assessed by the city prior to the flood at $723,100.
Yeah, you put this one out of this.
Sorry,
Oh, you don't do pens. This,
that's the first one.
that's a.
Is there an extra for sex?
There we go.
Thank you. I'm like, this is the same place.
Same one.
And
Oh.
this
Yeah.
property sold for $240,000, a third of the assessed price. Now, this was not renovated, and Jesse estimates it would be $150,000 to renovate it. But even with that renovated cost, that would bring that price up to $390,000. Again, 50% of the price. There was until very recently, and unfortunately, it went off the market, and before I could print out the listing, but 11 State Street had been assessed at $893,000 prior to the flood. Was reassessed to $579,000 after the flood. They had it on the market for 9 months at $635,000, and they had no sale of that property. Let me give you this. This is my letter, if you didn't get it earlier, from John.
So Liam, I think I missed something you said. Could you give me the figures for the 146 State Street property?
The 146 State Street
Yeah.
property. Yes, it was assessed in the reassessment at $723,100. The chart's on the back of the listing here. And then the sale price is
It's
on-
like 248.
in here, and it was $240,000.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in each of these three cases, the assessment by the city was reduced. In the case of, and you can see it on the back of 146, it went down from 723 to 355. In 148, it went down from 648 to 346. And in the case of 11 East State Street, it went from 893 to 635. So our primary argument here is that, and it's unfortunate because, this is the product of the Jacobs family's efforts over 20 or 30 years trying to build value. They would much rather be in here saying, hey, you're, not arguing about your assessment and saying, I could sell it for that and that would be great. What they're telling you is this flood has drastically reduced the value of all of the flood properties and affected, the hard earned value that the Jacobs family have done over the last 25 years in putting together and creating and maintaining these properties. So for two reasons, I think the city is bound to reduce the assessment. It cannot be the same value as it was before the flood. It just makes absolute no sense. And there are 3 commercial properties here that the city has already, because of the flood and the prices have reduced. There is in the tax assessment has to have 2 components. The first question is, what is the fair market value of the property as of April 1st, 2025? That is, what would a third-party buyer buy the property for in an open marketplace? We believe that it would certainly buy it for a lot less than the assessment buyer. We disputed the assessment previously, but we certainly believe it's less. But secondly, it has to be comparably assessed to similar properties in the community. And here are 3 properties that the city has already reduced the assessment from 2023 assessment. And we think that the city has to do the same here for these properties. Now, that's our big picture issue, is really the valuation based upon the flood. And it is it's unfortunate. We are, if you wish, we are willing to again provide you income and expenses for 21, 22. We won't do 23 because obviously that year was the disaster, and 24, but also show, but that we're not really here arguing as much on the basis of income and expenses and capitalization rates and all of those. We're arguing on the basis of the sales values and the comparable reassessments that the city has already made for other properties in the community that were flood affected. But we are glad, if you wish, to go property by property. Our view and our request was that based upon what the city has done for other properties, that these properties, and they're all flood affected properties, be reduced by 50% of the assessment. But we are willing to go into more details about income and expenses and cap rates and all those things if you choose to do that, if you want to do that.
I would like.
Yeah, because just to talk about that point a little bit, my recollection is that the dispute between you and the assessor 2 years ago was that the assessor's methodology was to assess the income and expenses on the results of a survey of all the commercial properties in the city. And your argument was that, and to apply those results to all the commercial properties, and your argument was that it should be based on the particular income and expenses of these particular properties. Do I have that right?
You are perfectly correct. We also had a dispute about the so-called capitalization rate.
And so,
And in this, one way to look at this valuation is investors invest in this sort of property based upon their expected return on their money. So if they want an 8% return, I'll just make it simple, and the property nets $8,000 a year, they're willing to pay $100,000 for that property because that $100,000 will net them $8,000 a year. Going into that 8,000 is, a risk valuation of whether they can get money cheap. These days you can get bonds at 4% or whatever, and you typically you would get more of a return on a risky investment such as real estate. So 8% has been used as a fair standard in the last couple of years with the interest rates. But if there is an increased risk, that is, the risk is that you have the potential of having another flood at some point in the future, then because the investment is riskier, then that investor may say, well, in order for me to take that risk, I want a 15% return or 12% return or some much higher return in order to pay them for the risk should it happen. And that's another way to do it. The city it has applied a capitalization rate to each property that is slightly different for each property. And and I'm sorry that this gets complicated, but the city does a capitalization rate based upon you don't include the taxes as an expense. So, but you then add that to the capitalization rate, and the city's tax rate this year is $2.30 approximately. So if you had an 8% cap rate, the city would calculate the income, the expenses minus taxes, and then use a 10.3% cap rate to do that. But we're glad to go over, property by property. We have provided attached to the letter the background of each property, the tax bill of each property, and we have a chart of the 23 floor assessments, the 24, 25 assessments, and our proposed assessments. But if you wish, we can also go over the income and expenses of each property.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, and one other question, just to follow up on my question about the methodology. As I understand it, part of the argument on the methodology is that the city could look at a property and say, well, this particular property owner is unusually inefficient or unusually lazy and not getting the place rented out, or not very good at controlling expenses. And so it's not reasonable to count those specific expenses and return for that property, when someone else could look at it and say, well, I can just get more money out of this property because I'm better at managing a property than the person who owns it now.
Right, but in this case, and I think Jesse can testify to this, is, his family has about 115 properties here in town. They have not got, they have not let tenants who landlords often let tenants who are there a long time don't increase their rents, don't keep up with things. That is not the case. I think he can testify that the rents that he's charging are fair market rentals for this marketplace and for the particular properties that are in their locations as well. I mean, somebody may pay a lesser tax to be on a third floor walk up into downtown without parking than they might up the hill where it's a little quieter and they have parking outside their door, but I think Jesse would say that, he is always try to maximize the rents. Obviously, each building can be different because there's, age and complexity. Some buildings that, maybe, on State Street, may have a different maintenance requirement than a freestanding building, or there's one property that has two buildings and that increases expenses. But in general, I think the expenses that we have used, you'll see for each property and we put on this chart compared what the city has projected and then what is actual for each property.
Okay, yeah, and just to be clear, I wasn't expressing an opinion.
No, but you're summarizing
Just using it as
what
an
our
example.
argument was, and I do appreciate that, and
Okay, so do you, Mary?
So I have a general question about the overview. So earlier you said you were not contesting either the cap rate or the income and.
oh, no,
size.
if you heard that, I totally I apologize. If we are continuing to contest the projected income, projected expenses, because we believe that the actual income and expenses are a better measure but you will see for purposes of valuation in these charts, we used the cap rate that the city put in. We did not argue on here about what that cap rate should be. So
So just to make sure I'm following, I appreciate that you are continuing to test the 24 assessment based on the cap rate and the income expenses. You are also saying you are contesting what is before us today, and those are both issues of contention for you. Okay.
that is correct. Unfortunately, the appeal process that with the property valuation and review has taken us all a lot longer than we thought it would, and we're still working on the 23 tax for that, but that's really a separate matter. Although we are, using some of the same data, the difference is, the real big difference between 23 and now is the flood.
And then in addition, I thought I heard you saying that you were proposing that your suggested appraised number for each property was 50% of the existing tax rate assessment. But in fact, it looks like on your chart that it's 50% of the 24 assessment, not the 25, if I'm doing my math correctly.
That's correct. On the original assessment, there had been some small adjustments made between 23 and 24 on some properties.
Yeah.
But most of them, you'll see, I mean, and they were some small adjustments. So we are 50% of the citywide assessment of 23.
Well, to be clear, again, looking at your
Yeah.
chart, I'm seeing, just scanning quickly, that one is the same as from 23 to 25, but all of the rest the city has adjusted. You do not indicate a proposed assessment for the Charlie O building, 70, I should have said 70 Main Street. Maybe you'll get to that in your presentation.
Yeah, that's because that was not a flood. A flood influenced property, and I actually don't know. When I left your meeting, you two were gonna go visit that, and did that get adjusted?
Marty did make an adjustment to it. We're gonna continue to grieve it. I think that the adjustment should be a little bit more significant.
Okay,
So we'll find out what you're looking for on that property when we get to it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything to say now, Marty, or do you want to go by property by property?
Yeah, I just go.
You have another, yes,
pardon me?
you had another. You've heard from that document.
Oh, yes. I actually blew it up so I could read it.
I remember this one in the electronics. So,
Pardon
you
me?
send this one electronically?
No, we did not.
Okay, I don't remember seeing.
And he was in a particular.
And they were like, or the hill list was in, and that's if they still are.
Well, I'm just out. Sorry.
And so this is the table where this, each page is one of the properties and your statement of income and expenses on these properties.
These are for 21, 22, and 24. We didn't include 23 because obviously in that year, the rents were, there were no rents and it would be an unfair comparison. So these are those 3 years. The actual income and the actual expenses, they're yes. And then on the bottom left, the top chart is if we took the average income, the average expenses, and had a net income excluding taxes, and then used the capitalization rate that the city used, then that would be the value that that would be at. The bottom is the city estimate of gross income, of expenses, and net income. And then if we use that same cap rate, what city valuation would be on that. Although the assessment of 54 Main Street is less, it's 777. I don't know if we want to start with this 54 Main, but the obvious difference here is the expenses, are city estimates that the expenses are more than the actual expenses, but the net income, they project that the actual net income is really, 25% more, or 112,000 versus 160,000. So that accounts for the difference between the two.
Sorry. Would help me if we stayed with the order these are in,
Sure,
and then we hunt it here. There's
No problem.
streets to hunt for.
okay. So
So could you repeat that?
5 to
I was
7,
proposing that we think there's an order of it, and because they're likewise in,
On the agenda?
I think they match here. This. These go in reverse order of. They're stacked here, reverse order, of how they appear in the list.
no, they're not reverse order. but-
Yeah, I'm sorry, they are.
Oh.
Because there's spring, there's Langdon and our printout, these are mine.
Oh,
And then-
you're talking about,
So,
I don't have the cities.
or to get one group and then to get everything else follow that.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of that either.
And-
Yeah, we, just to be clear, we don't have a copy of what Marty has given you, so we don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
This is what I got out to you a week ago. So. Should have it out. The whole packet. Yeah, I can double check that if you want.
Yeah, no, I don't think either. Have you seen them? You have,
I have.
I have.
I
Okay.
think we sent it to both of you.
So to clarify the presentation of evidence, do members of,
You as the committee decide, tell us how you want to go.
yeah, so that's what I'm gonna ask. Do members of the board want to hear them testify about the contents of these individual sheets? Or do you want to just accept these as their sworn testimony of what their actual expenses are? The second one?
I recommend that because when you get in your subcommittees, that's when you really dive down into it.
Right.
Now, it's mathematical,
Yep. Okay, so we're not gonna make you go over and testify about what's in each of these pages. We'll just accept this as your testimony to this. Anyone want to add to it?
One thing I want to make sure though is that we have understanding of vacancy, I guess there is a vacancy,
There must be a line.
there's a
Yep.
percentage of people, that is the accurate percentage for that year, how much of the building is vacant.
No, that's an estimated vacancy rate that we use kind of across the portfolio. in
Okay, so
Montpelier.
I would like to get testimony in each individual property, what the vacancy rate has been for the property that we're using for. Sure.
Okay. And so then in getting ready for tonight's meeting, I organized my forms in order of what's on the agenda, but I gather that what went out in the packet is in reverse order, is that right?
It's sort of that way, but it's not exact, but we can find them all and put them in whatever order we want to do it. The order in the letters,
That's how my order is. That makes a difference.
okay,
Well, if that works for
then
people,
just call out the address and we'll find it.
why don't we
What
do
are
that?
these?
Yeah.
This is,
So-
this is the Mad Taco, which is sold after the fire to
Yeah.
the current owners of it.
5 to 7 Ports or Park, 5 to 7 State Street.
On this, on this screen.
26, right, yeah, so this is a restaurant that was fully out for this is a condo that is with pizza restaurants, they sold fully furnished with a payment to a pizza operator. This 127 is the Dairy Cream, which is bonus business, and with a business. And
Okay.
real estate.
But whatever,
These flyers.
whatever you want is,
These would have been, for this one, I know, the
Oh,
one
68 Elm Street.
right next to Charlie, but this. She did owner finance.
I guess I don't know what
Back
packet.
to Try to get.
Well, probably shouldn't need one reactors.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the one that got emailed.
okay. Is it?
Yeah.
I'll make up your mind if you remove too many.
I'm looking at 5 to 7 stage.
Yeah, I have some.
I don't know if it's on.
Yeah,
About that.
yeah.
You on the same thing?
Parties.
Yeah.
That was not all. There was like.
Okay, well, let's start with 5 to 7 states. And we'll see how it goes from there. It looks like it follows the items on the agenda. Yeah,
So 5 to 7 State Street, Liam spoke earlier about a two-prong test, and the reappraisal was done in 2023. The reappraisal has to meet a three-prong test with the state in order to be signed off. The data has to be correct. The property has to be assessed according to fair market value. And it has to be assessed fairly with other comparable properties. So in these reports, each property has a 3-page report. And it will show comparison to sales. Assessment compared to other equities, equity comps, and the income approach. Where the values fall for that. Some of you have seen these reports before. I'll take my time on this first one and then we can adjust speed as we go. 5 to 7 State Street, it's gonna have 2 grand list values on the top there. The 2024 and then the 2025 values. The 2025 value was adjusted down due to flooding. When we were hearing abatement hearings, we came up with a formula. Flooded properties all received the same adjustment. 5 to 7 State Street did receive the same adjustment. The property description talks about the size of the lot, when the home was built, or when the structure was built, and what it contains. As far as units and square footage. Heating systems and condition plays big into, valuing these properties. Comparable sales at the bottom. The first 5 are sales before the flood. And they show an average of $136 per square foot. The subject is at the very bottom, 5 to 7 State Street. It is currently assessed at $107 per square foot. The second 5, those are sales after the flood of commercial properties that were flood affected. And you can see that those average $271 per square foot. Excuse me. Is everybody following that first page okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. And all of this is gonna match up to the property record cards that are attached. Each one of them has a record card. I can show you where everything is referenced on the card. On the second page. They spoke about 3 flood properties that sold. 148 State Street is the old Realtor building by the bridge. And I inspected that property at the time of sale, and it was still in gutted condition, which is why the assessment got lowered. 146 State Street, that was the property owned by what is now East Rise. It was Vermont State Employees Credit Union. Excuse me, that one was also in flood damaged condition when it sold. 11 East State Street did have a contract on it. I happened to get a call from a realtor that had a contract on it. It did fall apart. But that property also is in unfinished flood damaged condition.
Is that the VCIL building?
Correct. Yeah. So all 3 of those, the assessments were lower because they are still in flood damage condition.
Sorry, Marty,
Yes.
what is the assessment on 11 East State?
They're close to sale price. I think Liam actually has that in his.
Okay, so maybe.
It's
No,
in,
no, I can buy it.
Yeah, 11 East State.
is,
Eight
it
ninety.
was
579.
893 and now it's 579.
579.
So let's.
East State.
Marty, does that assessment include the parking spaces?
Yes.
VCIL has those reserved parking spaces and, yeah.
Since you're giving us the average square footage. Is it noteworthy what the square footage, square foot price was on the 3 properties we just discussed?
No, because none of the Jacobs properties are still in flood damage condition. The one exception was,
But it's but their argument for this question, they're saying that they're still impacted by it.
but they're in different condition. They're totally, they're not habitable. These 3, where the Jacobs properties are habitable. I can get you that information easily enough.
Did you testify that the sale price of 11 East State was gonna be close to in the contract that fell apart, was gonna be close to?
Yeah.
Neither of those?
Well, you can't count property that didn't
It
sell,
didn't close, right, correct.
because
Yeah.
who knows why it fell apart?
Can you hear that, Marty? You said that the city reduced the assessment down on this one, from 2023. You were saying because of the formula that the VCA applied.
Right.
But that was, my recollection was that was due to flood damage, and that if somebody then applied for permits and got, renovation back to, they fixed it all,
Yes.
then in that permitting process, you would reevaluate back up to current.
So the trouble we're having is all these properties are still under appeal. And it's getting complicated to untangle everything. We're due to hear these pretty soon, so it's all going to be untangled at the next level.
You're due to hear them.
The PVR.
And
Property, yes, property valuations. Does that make sense? It's-
Yeah, I'm curious as to the process. That was, my reflection was that was a one-time adjustment based on the fact that all of those properties were mostly
Yes.
in flood damage for most of that year.
Yes,
But my assumption would be that once they were repaired.
Yeah.
They would go back up to whatever a non-flood damaged assessment would be.
Yeah.
And then we would know about that because of the permitting process.
so everybody else's has been adjusted accordingly to the ones that have been renovated or put back. These are still in flood damage condition because of the appeals. It's going to be easier to make the adjustments once. It's complicated to undo these.
But the city is potentially losing out tax revenue for the years well said.
And, right, and that's what we're trying to settle.
Okay, I'm concerned about that.
Okay.
The
I,
city does, actually, the city has received all of the tax revenue that is due. If the appeals are successful, it would be, some of it would be returned.
No, the taxes are paid in full.
No, that's not what she's saying. She's saying that there should be more taxes paid because these
Well,
assessments should have been raised.
Well. I mean, I don't know if we want to have this discussion individually, but. That is our precise argument. Even if they're repaired. Somebody is still not going to pay the same amount for a flood damaged property that's been repaired. If there's a risk that it's gonna flood again. So they're never gonna be, we're never gonna go back up to 100% because maybe 10 years from now, people will forget about it. That's sort of what happened the last time. But I think as of now, I think nobody's gonna buy it in the first place. But if they're gonna buy it, they're gonna buy it.
Jude, were you trying to,
Yeah,
say
I,
something?
I'm sorry, I was muttering, but my comment was, you don't know that no one will buy it for that. I mean, that's a projection that you're making.
So, and that's my argument with the sales.
Yeah, well,
What I provided on here is that there has been 5 sales of flooded properties.
right.
so we can continue sorting this particular property.
Yes,
It was assessed. Down, it was in 2003 prior to the flood, it was at 605. And then it was assessed down to 565, 600 due to flood damage.
yes.
And that's its current assessment,
Correct.
even though the property has been repaired. And your plan is to not increase that assessment until it goes to PBR.
Yeah, which is end of this month.
So that means that there's an entire year.
The decision is going to be retroactive and applicable for 3 years.
I'm concerned that there is for this current year, that this assessment of 565 is actually artificially adjusted down to flood damage, not due to what the market, but due to the assumption that the building's still damaged. And
Correct. That's, yes.
I don't think that's accurate,
Well-
or how we intended
No,
those decisions to go out here.
right. And then, like I said, once this decision is handed down, it's going to apply for 23, 24, and 25. So it's going to override these current numbers.
And the payment or credit, whatever it is.
Yes. Yes,
So we either get it, more money, more of both.
or less back adjusted, yes.
The court will decide and then the money will flow accordingly.
But their decision is about the 2023 assessment.
You know, it becomes applicable for 3 years. This is a totally
okay.
different situation.
Gotcha.
So this will be for 25, 26, 27, whatever's decided on.
So the fact that the city adjusted it downward due to flood damage in 23 applies after the PBR decision.
They're gonna go back. PBR is gonna go back and say, starting in 2023, this is where it needs to be. 23, 24, and 25.
And they will do that taking into account both their arguments prior to the flood, which is why things were originally appealed in 23.
This is prior to flood.
And then they will also take into account the flood damage. So that's,
That's going to be settled on this year.
all right, I'm still a little concerned about that.
Yeah,
May I? The 3-year assessment is only if there's no substantial material change in the property or there's not a citywide reassessment. So whatever PVR decides will be for 23 and 24, well, 23, 24, 24, 25. This will start a whole new appeal process.
That's what he said.
Yes.
so Rosie, I think we get your point.
Okay.
Does everybody get Rosie's point that, yeah, and regardless of whether you think. What you think the value of any of these properties is going forward, it just seems logical that. A gutted building. Isn't worth as much as that same building once it's rehabbed. So. What that does to the ultimate value, we don't know. Okay. And. Back to you, Marty.
The last part of that second page is the income approach, which is also on the property record card. The income numbers for this property, for all the properties, are based on a survey that was done during the reappraisal. The reappraisal contractor sent out a survey to all commercial property owners. We had a little over 200 responses. Those numbers were put into a database and gleaned. They were an average or a typical number was derived from all of the information that was given. The reason that is done is, like Jack said, it doesn't benefit bad landlords, and it doesn't punish good landlords. So it's what should this property rent for. So numbers are going to be different from actual. Another issue is income and expense information from each property owner is private and confidential. It's not allowed to be put in the public. If Jesse decides to, that's up to him. But it cannot come out of my office. So the numbers have to be adjusted for typical or average numbers. So
that means neutralized.
yes. So those numbers are the same ones that are going to be on the property record card. Income, typical vacancy loss, typical expenses and reserves, what the net income should be, and what the typical cap rate is for property of this style. So the income approach indicates a value of 645,500, and the property assessment is 565,600. So it is assessed below where the income approach indicates value.
And so to follow up on what Rosie was asking about the vacancy rate for these properties, this is one where the taxpayer is showing vacancy rate of 3%, which is between 2,500 and 3,000 for each of these years, and you're actually counting a higher vacancy.
I think it's typically between 5% and 8%.
Okay.
And that's information that was given to us by all commercial properties.
Can I ask a little bit more about that survey? Were they required?
There's a $100 fine if they don't. Most people did. I don't know if the fine really has any teeth or not, but we got a good response.
So I'm just noting that you testified that the Jacobs family has 115 properties in town. We got 200 survey responses. The results are a pretty good reflection of what they're.
No,
Maybe it's
not
115
properties, units,
Units, okay.
So
not properties. Number of these properties are multi-unit.
I honestly don't know I don't know the percentage, but they were impressed. They got over 200 responses. The reappraisal contract.
of which some number were. Jacob's not.
Yes, I believe he filed all of them. A good deal, and I can't testify, but quite a few of Jacob's stuff came.
Okay,
Good with that page? Last page is the equity comparison of assessment. And these are all pretty much gonna look the same for each property. What I've done is I've taken these commercial properties, compared the square foot value, the assessed value, and compared it to the subnet, which is $180 per square foot. And it falls, you know, I think below the equity comparables. So conclusion on this one is I don't feel like this property is all assessed at 565, 600. Everything has been applied and weighted properly according to how the state wants this done. So I feel like this one is equitably assessed. Let's have a quick look at the property record card for it. Just so everybody knows where to find the information, the side with the P and the star on it. That's gonna be a lot of pertinent information to the land, to the income, and the floor, the rooms, the room counts, and what each building contains. So halfway down or partway down the right in the middle, you'll see previous assessment. It's going to give a history of the assessed value of each one of these properties for the year. You'll see 2AB, that stands for the abstract. That's before the grand list is formally filed. GL is grand list, so there's the value for 25, 24, 23. So you can see the assessment on this property has been adjusted down from 652 900 was the original value given by the reappraisal contractor to its current 565 600. There's some other sale information is not really relevant. Income information is, you're going to find that pretty useful. Gives the apartment count, what floor the apartments are on, and the quality. These are A-rated apartments. A-rated apartments on the survey tend to rent for a certain dollar per square foot, a monthly rent.
Are those actuals or estimated?
These are gonna be estimated, yeah.
because those also are part of the survey,
Proprietary information, yeah,
but there was something else that you surveyed the property owners of.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah. And it does give the office and the retail space in the property as well. And then right below that, you'll see the gross income that we just talked about.
And this is all based on the survey results.
Yes, yeah. On the other side, you'll see a picture down in the bottom right-hand corner of the property. It's a description of the physical characteristics of the building itself. Estimated year built. The grade of construction that was assigned to it, the condition. Total units, floor count. The condition of the bathrooms, whoever ends up doing inspections will want to make sure that the conditions match up with what's on here for bathrooms, for bedroom counts and those things. The sketch is over on the right-hand side. So the inspection crew can use that for the floor counts and where apartments land. Depreciation on towards the left-hand side down towards the middle, that's a big indicator where we make the big adjustments for condition, other special items like limited to no parkings under the economic. He's receiving a deduction in value for having limited amount of parking. The CK parcel, that's to remind me to check it at the end of the year when I run a certain report to double check the value on it.
So that's just a note to you
Right.
So it's just an entry license of the value.
That's the depreciation that was applied for the flood damage. So whenever I run a report that says, to pull up all check parcels, I can go back and look and see what that adjustment was and then undo it.
But that 10% depreciation for flood damage was not applied to the,
That was 24th,
has already been taken into it.
yes.
Is that accounted for in the April 1st, 2025 budget?
Yes. Well, if it helps, there was no adjustment made to 2025. It's just carried, the 24 numbers carried over. So that adjustment was made in 24.
So the 24 amount was adjusted downward,
Yes,
and that downward adjustment was carried over, even though it's no longer. flood
Correct.
damage. Reason for that is you don't want to make the updates until PBR
correct.
makes it.
Correct.
How is that for properties that are not being appealed to PBR? Did you make those adjustments?
Yes.
Okay, any more questions for the assessor on this property?
Donna has something.
Well, it's a flow of things and there's other regulations of when he has to appeal and when we have to decide, but yet it seems like we can decide that if the court makes a decision, then that can impact what we decide.
This is going to be different. Like Liam said, they're gonna tell us what the value has to be. Their argument is that there's been substantial change to the property. Whenever there's substantial change to the property, I can adjust it up or down. The one at 148, if that one gets locked in at a 3-year value at its current value, but Jesse fixes it up before that date is up, it's gonna get adjusted accordingly to its condition as of April 1st.
And so this is a question that I don't think I've seen before in my tenure on here. If a decision comes out of PVR, I think you said that sets the value for 3 years. Does that potentially mean that? Does that potentially moot out?
No,
And
it's
if-
23,
and appeal?
24, 25.
Okay,
And then this is separate.
And yeah, you're saying that all of these things, their argument about this is substantial value, and that also if they do renovation for substantial.
Mhm.
Substantial change to the property. Improvement to the property. So if. Any of those can override PBR renovation,
Yes,
when does that happen?
April 1st. Or are you asking about the PRDC?
No, so PBR makes their decision,
Yes.
say this fall.
Okay.
Then are you able to then go back and apply your changes due to a substantial improvement to the property going back to April 1st, 25, or have we missed the vote on?
25 has passed.
So this is why I think there's an inequity here. That because they appealed to PBR, they're getting a pass on getting adjusted back up April 1st, 2025, versus everybody else who didn't appeal. You got rid of that 10% reduction due to flood damage on April 1st of 2025.
Yeah, the decision that's going to be made is going to carry forward for 3 years. So that's going to override what I gave them for 24.
And will the decision take into account for 25 that there is no longer flood damage and there has been substantial improvements?
That'll be different of the PBR decision.
But we're looking at,
Wait, I didn't understand.
yeah. Do you have something to clarify this, Julie?
Well, I'll tell, there's a legal issue, but then there's a factual issue, okay? Legally, when there is an appeal and it is decided at the PVR or at the court, that is binding for the tax year and 2 subsequent tax years, unless there is a substantial and material change or a townwide reassessment, in which event it will not carry on for that future year. So in this case, whatever decision PVR will apply to 23, 24, 24, 25. But we're appealing this separately because there's pre-flood and post-flood. And I think that you're missing the issue that just because the property has been renovated does not make it as valuable as it was before. Because an investor is, or anybody buying, it's like you have a car and it gets flooded. And then somebody go to buy that car for the same amount, even though the flooding has been fixed? No, the same with a house, the property, these properties become tainted now, that any investor is going to buy them for less, even though technically they're fixed up. Why? Because there is a risk of the flood. And so just because the property has been fixed up doesn't mean that the value should go back up.
I think we understand that argument, but a question I have for you is, and this is a legal question, I think, when you talk about a real and substantial change in the property, is that defined by statute as a change in the physical condition of the property, or does it also encompass the market factors that you've been arguing?
No, I don't think it would affect market factors.
Okay,
It would
so
be
any
substantial
of these
material.
properties that were damaged by the flood, and they might wind up being better after renovations, and they'll wind up being better than they were before the flood. That doesn't change the market argument you're making, but it could be a real and substantial change that makes it go up or down, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, if we're gonna, are we gonna move on to the next property? Because we have a comment on,
Yeah.
We're not
What?
quite done with this one, Sal Van Lane.
I'm just wondering if you're arguing that the risk of flood is from the time.
Yes. Yeah, I think the risk had two factors. One, the risk as flood has changed, and it's the frequency of the flood. This, the last flood before now was, somebody told me, 2011. So it was 12 years between the last flood and this flood. And then the flood before that was 20 years, or some period, 99. What? So in 92, 20 years to 2012, 12 years to 11 years to 23, I think.
Well, and then there was a flood, there was another flood the same day in 24, not as substantial as.
Right,
23.
so I think anybody who's looking at buying a property in downtown Montpelier is going to evaluate the possibility of an increased flood being there. Certainly insurance costs, flood insurance and regular insurance costs have gone way up, and they're gonna worry about that risk. It's
Okay, got you on that.
Yeah.
Elaine.
I think the thing that keeps coming to my mind is that not the case across the board, not just for these properties?
Elaine, could you, I'm not hearing that.
Sorry, the thing that comes to my mind when I hear these, I absolutely agree, the risk of flooding has definitely increased. I don't understand how it's applicable to just these properties. It seems across the board to every owner, to every building, to every unit in the town. So I don't know why that would affect, if the assessments are being done correctly, the assessments should be taking that into account for every property.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, there is no reason why the rest of those property owners on State Street and on Main Street aren't in here saying, my property isn't worth less. It's just, look, the way the system works has been rigged in Vermont to discourage appeals, because if your assessment doesn't change in any year, you just get your tax bill. right? You get your tax bill after the period of time you can appeal. So if you went out and asked 90% of the people, property owners, even sophisticated ones, they will think that the only time they can appeal is at when there's been a reassessment. In fact, you can appeal any year. And you have the right to appeal any year, but people don't because they don't know they can. So that's why there's not a group of people
Okay.
in here appealing.
Now, so I would argue, the five sales that, the five sales that are on the bottom there, every one of those is sold over assessed value. So these are all properties that have flooded. They're anticipating, they rebuilt four floods. Each one of those sale prices are over what the city has them assessed at.
And Marty, are the same, are your comparables gonna be the same for all these properties?
Yes.
Okay,
So basically, each report's gonna be the same with different, just different numbers, different addresses. Same cost, one, making Charlie Hills, Garden Hill. We got it. And these are all,
okay, I'd like to see if we can get to the end of this one, because I think all the rest will go more smoothly. I see there are a couple of other questions, Rosie.
So I'm curious if your argument that the property is less valuable than it was before, when I look at your net income for 2021 and 2022 versus 2024, I mean, you're bringing in similar or even more rent. Your expenses are very similar from year to year. They've in fact fallen since 2021. And actually fallen since both years. And so your net income is higher than it was in 2022 and like higher than it was in both years. So that's not, why aren't you arguing that?
Because of the risk factor. Again, is somebody going to buy a property for $600,000 with the possibility that it will flood and cost them? How much did you lose? 200,000, 300,000 in 1 year? That's really, in 2023, which is not here, there was negative income, enormous expenses, not covered by insurance. So anybody buying that property is going to say to themselves, what risk am I taking that this property floods again? And I have to spend $250,000 plus hundreds of thousands of hours, or thousands of hours, excuse me, to work on repair and replacement and all of the hassles that go along with a flooded property. It's just not
Sales too.
right.
Okay,
And can we
let me
comment on
jump
those
in.
sales?
I think, Donna, did you have a question, a factual question? Okay, I think what we're sort of doing is getting into argument also. I think,
But we would like to comment on the comparable sales.
okay,
And that was just a presentation. So Jesse,
Yeah,
if you,
I think to make a note about the sales is really important, other than the fact that the size of the properties that have sold since the flood are very small. They're also primarily a specific property type, 127 or 72 here. That's the Mad Taco that actually sold after the fire. They did full rehab, and the folks who took it over are the owners. It's an owner-user situation there. 20 State Street, which is Positive Pie. Those folks got hammered in the flood. They wanted to get out. They sold their condo unit with all of the equipment in there, ready to operate, to a pizza owner who is running it as an owner user. So that would give additional value to that. It's also very different than to have a single owner user property than one that has multiple tenants, multiple stories, multiple user types. 68 Main Street, that's right next to Charlie O's. I got to admit, Kelly did really good on that one, 400,000. She did offer very favorable owner financing. I know because she offered it to me, 3% on the money to borrow against purchasing the place. So when somebody offers you favorable terms like that, you're able to pay more money for something. 320 State Street, that's the Dairy Cream, right?
That's what,
320 State Street, the creamy stand, right? So again, it's, built-in business here that somebody purchased the property and operations, but they haven't bought it to lease it out. They're actually using it as a place for their business. So I think that that's very different than these other properties that are here.
okay, thanks. I think I'm gonna ask people to hold arguing about this until later.
Just one comment on the card. And on the first page where in the middle, there are the rents. These are the projected rents. You just want to know what the actual rents are for those individuals, units. So, the first one, second floor, 2-bedroom is at $1,250, not $1,350. The second one is,
Wait, well, it's gonna be, I'm not following you on.
okay, this box in the middle,
Yeah, I read our box.
see it says rent,
Yeah.
under rent, it says $1,350.
Generic number, but it's still even. I know, maybe I got the wrong thing. I don't see it.
So this, on the card, on the card.
We're on,
Oh, that looks like a 3. That's a 13.
so
So the imputed rent is $1,350,
Yeah.
the actual, I'm just telling you what the actual rents.
Okay,
$1,250, instead of $950, it's $900, instead of $1,150, it's $1,050, and instead of $950, it's $900. So it's $100 less, $50 less, $100 less, $50 less.
Yeah, those amounts that are taken.
sure.
Right.
Right, but we're just telling you what are
Okay.
actually charged in April 1st, 2025.
Great. We took a lot of time on this first property. I think it was valuable to do that. But we've got a lot of properties, so let's see if we can get through the others more quickly. Next up. Oh, yes. Yeah, William.
So we have no objection to doing what you did with our submission and saying, this is the city's submission and he can submit it and. Because we just really discussed the issues. I don't think there's,
I think it will be a lot
I
more
mean, I think
similar issues.
it'll be all the same issues for all the other properties.
Yeah.
In the same place.
So, yeah, I think that's right. I think we're we're at a baseline of understanding of the positions of both parties now. So we need to appoint a committee of 3 members.
I suggest we do that all at once. We go down and just people can.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So you commented on the comps that suggested that they're not really comparable because of the nature of properties and the businesses they're in. Do you have a different set that you would like for us to look at?
No, of the comparable sales that have happened, we brought them to you. They're all flood affected. There aren't any.
Those are actually still in a flooded state. They, in a dilapidated, haven't.
Right, but talk to me
They're not being better, they also compare.
Sure, I totally agree with you about that. So our property at 148 State Street that we purchased for $345,000. We'll likely be able to get that up and operational with a $90,000 investment. So, even if I'm wrong by 60,000, it's another 150 to get the place up and going. That would put the value well below where it had been previously assessed in 2023.
Okay, I understand. Okay, the suggestion was we just appoint the committees at the end. I think that's fine to do that. One of the questions that I think is in my mind, rather than go through each property in detail, I will rule that we're accepting all of these, all the submissions from the assessor as the evidence from the assessor, unless people have specific questions. In your list of properties, are there?
There's
I know
there's one property that doesn't exist in this list, and that's 139 Main Street. There was no income approach that Marty used to put the value together. He must misremember the walkthrough that we did prior to the flood, because his documentation acknowledges that the entire building was in like an uninhabitable state, but the entire basement was fully finished prior to the flood, and all heating systems were operational. All of the electric in the building was operational. The first floor didn't have any carpet, and all of the walls had been taken out. So he does recall that correctly. But at this point, after the flood, the entire basement has been destroyed. Half of the electrical isn't working. The original heating system that was in there when he first came to walk through is no longer operational. We have just kind of space heaters in one of the spaces to use for folks who do work with our management company. We use it like a warehouse. Then there's an apartment upstairs that was never affected. So that was the same. I don't actually remember, Marty, if we walked through the apartment when you and I looked at it together.
Yeah, I went through there on. Looks like May 23, and actually we made an adjustment. The reappraisal value on that was everybody has that up, but there was a 2023 value of $878,500 originally placed on because the contractor did not fit inside. The adjusted only did fit inside, and the assessment dropped to $725,100.
This is a funeral parlor, right?
Funeral parlor, because of the unfinished condition.
It's never gonna get rid of that name. Hi, everybody's just gonna call it the funeral parlor.
Yeah.
It's. First,
I'm working on it.
Yeah, some life in it.
that'd be great. It's just, for some of us, it helps to, just like when you say Charlie O's, we know Charlie O's, even if we don't know the address.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to say that is not a packet that you would have received, because we didn't put any income and expenses together for that. There's very limited income coming in over there.
In my report, doesn't have any info on that either.
I didn't think so, yeah.
So, what I was gonna ask is that although some of these, we've been discussing these properties as, or they've been characterized as flood affected properties, but I think some of them were not actually flooded. Is that correct?
No, all of the properties that we plan to discuss here with you today that are on the list and you've been provided information for were flooded.
Except.
Even 2 to 4 Spring Street?
2 to 4 Spring Street was
Oh, okay.
yeah.
The exception for me was 15 Berry Street, place. Because that building opened up pretty quick, that one did not get flood adjustment.
Okay.
And I think we should talk about Charlie O's real quick.
Okay.
It was a street number.
70 Main Street.
78.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was suggested. That was suggested.
I did it based on the income and expenses. I think I
Sense
made
of what it's like on the
140.
inside.
Midway.
Okay,
Well, that one's had several adjustments. flood, fire, repair. And then the second floor is still not completely finished. So we lowered the assessment to 191,900. Then raised it back up to 272. Jessica came in for, the grievance. And said the second floor is still, smoke damage not finished. So it's lowered back down to 246, so it's been, adjusted up and down, that was a sign. That 246 includes, the second floor damage.
Isn't that where your office was, Jesse?
It was,
And now,
it's not. Yeah.
Ron, did you have a question? No, okay. Okay. Any questions for Rosie?
So, Barney, on this one, though, your report says the Williams rating C average for quality and characteristics for its needs. Does that account for the fire?
Sorry, I'm so confused about the 191 for 2024, and then property adjustments, it says 272 in 2024.
So the, abstract, that's the preliminary grand list before it's official.
Oh,
And then the 246 is the official large strand on grand list comprehensive.
And are all these properties on appeal to PVR? Okay.
I think they all are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about where we are about any of these properties? State.
So.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear that. What was that?
About the timing of inspection for DVR ruling. Because of 3 years. You say it's under.
It's a different tax year and we have 30 days to make our reports. So that's. We can't be certain that PVR is going to be done within that time frame.
Well,
In fact, I think we can be certain that they will not be.
Yes,
Because you said you have the hearing is sometimes late, sometimes maybe this month.
the hearing's on the 25th, and I do not believe we're gonna have a
Okay,
decision quickly. Based upon how long it's taken us to get there.
yes, Mary.
Where I'm lost on the issue, and I understand these are separate initiatives. But the beginning number is 185. That reason different is based on how methodology is. Which depends, may change, depending on the outcome of the hearing. So the beginning number that we're working with before the change. And then, so I'm a little stuck on how to do it again. What is the number we did with what is trying to get at?
I think we should focus on this one, we need to propose it. If it changes that, these are both. Different subject.
I don't think you have much choice of starting with whatever the assessment was of April 21st, 2025, and making your decision from that. I mean, there's not, I don't think you can, because this really is a discrete matter. I think that's the only way you have to do it.
So, yeah, so the positions of the parties, I think are clear. The assessor's position is what's in here. The taxpayer's position is what's in their memo. And so those are the starting points. Is that?
And one of the questions that, or one of the bases that we move from correct me if I'm wrong on this, is we assume that the assessor's valuation is correct unless we have been convinced by the argument of the health.
Yeah.
So that does then narrow down. I thought, thought. It is down to, parties never right, or do we agree that there is some broad things happening because of the flood plan that we need to adjust,
Yeah.
either to what is being proposed in something else.
We're-
And that's really the only question before.
There's another inspections, the documents about quality.
Yeah, but none of that is not,
When they're not,
yeah.
here we're talking about money.
And so the appellant has not disputed any of Marty's findings.
Well, yes, we have disputed the income and expenses and as well as the valuation based upon
But,
the sales.
that it should be a C plus rather than B minus rating for the building.
We have not, yeah, we haven't challenged those individually. Really, it's income and expenses is really, and then the effect of the flood.
And that's what makes this kind of a crazy thing to me. As we were preparing for these hearings, I was talking to the clerk and saying, well, we even need to have inspections because this is not what the findings of the inspection are not what the any of these appeals are gonna be, if they're gonna hinge on. But by statute, I believe we're required to, and that's what we heard from the Secretary of State.
With the exception.
Yeah, on all of them. Yeah,
I think we can waive an inspection if you choose to waive the inspection. That's up to you. I don't think there's any dispute here. It's really not a dispute about grades or anything like that of building, but that's entirely up to you. It accommodate you if you want. If there's any particular building you want to inspect or not.
Can't hear you, Ron.
We got an exception during the flood, and I was told by the LCT that it is required to do inspections otherwise. We already stated emergency even during the 23, so we gotta wait, but not as far as we know.
so then the question is whether the parties can weigh that. Maybe that's something we can talk about.
Yeah,
You're not-
you can check with your counsel, but I think we're willing to waive, but we're willing to let you in. My understanding of the law is that if we didn't let you inspect, then you can dismiss the appeal. And so that's the penalty for not allowing you to inspect. But I think that the inspection can be waived if the physical issues are not at issue. But check with your counsel, please.
Yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll follow up with our attorney to see, because it doesn't make sense to have to do the inspections, but. But
But if you need, we're glad to do it.
taxpayer's position is you're willing to waive and you're willing to allow us to inspect every property that you're appealing.
Yes.
Gotcha. Rosie.
I'm wondering, typically we write one opinion for each property, but I'm wondering if it's appropriate here to write one opinion for all the properties, given that one appeal. But I don't,
I believe last time was one opinion for all their problems and all the team.
so even if we assign separate inspection committees, all the we inspected and it's still there, reports that go to one person who would draft.
Okay, so procedurally. I'm gonna suggest. That we. What, suspend?
Or recess.
Recess,
Yeah, while the hearings are still open, we don't want to close the hearing.
the hearing's open, we recess. Maybe set ourselves a deadline of a week to confirm the waiver issue. And And then what, reconvene to see if we wanna create separate committees or? I'm open to suggestion.
But he doesn't need the clerk to assign.
I could, that would be a lot of emailing back and forth.
Oh, I was thinking you would look at the list and say, 3 people do this, 3 people do that, and 3 us, each committee. Can't come over and figure out you.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's.
I mean, unless anybody really wants to see inside the funeral home or something.
Oh,
Probably the most interesting one to look at.
Don't give me all, no, there's not.
You're gonna get a ruling from either the Secretary of State or the Montpelier City Town, both,
Mark.
From our lawyer, yeah.
and. We're all here, we could set tentative groups that will either inspect or not inspect.
That's wise.
That might be a good idea, just because it's, when everyone's in the room, that's the easiest time to.
Yes.
Then John had additional names.
I've got a few, yeah. More, not many, one of them showed up.
Yeah,
And anybody, including Harry, you should review for inspecting what you missed.
Yeah.
Take, yeah.
Mary.
So if we are informed that in fact we should do an inspection. I'm assuming that it can be a pro forma inspection, that we can meet, we can walk in the door and say we
Say,
inspect.
yep, this is the building.
This, yeah, but just, I think we all want to be on the same page
Yeah,
if that's the case. Otherwise, we'll have different experiences.
I think we're gonna hear that we're stuck with inspection.
I think
so too.
But then back to, is it appropriate just to essentially do a pro forma, as you said? Yes.
Or is there a protocol for doing inspections? They have to be done a certain way? I've never done it.
Let's see.
it's pretty,
To look at it. You just go in and look at things.
Yeah.
Inspected by-
But in other cases, we've like walked into each room and said, yes, this is that. I mean, it's a
great
significant.
tape measures sometimes.
Sometimes being.
Yeah,
No.
so we shouldn't have to do
Statute just says shall be inspected by a committee of not less than 3 members of, it should be fewer, shouldn't it? 3 members of the board who shall report to the board within 30 days from hearing out the appeal. It doesn't describe how it needs to
Yeah,
go.
Is the exception to that, the Charlie O's building, because there is a question. On that building, you're appealing that the damage.
If you want to come upstairs and see the smoke damage there, you are welcome to.
Sorry, I'm just trying to
Sure.
understand the basis for your appeal for that.
Yes,
That is part of.
all of that square footage is non-functional at this point, so that's the basis for my
Well, is the
appeal.
basement still?
The basement is not, all of Charlie's space and the basement is operational.
so that's a separate,
That sounds like that committee needs to go.
has to do really do that, yeah.
I'm sorry, I interested, which is, one of the things that is being appealed is sort of the status of the market. And so I'm wondering about our ability to get additional information on that. And whether we can interview people or look at additional documents, or whether we're limited.
The evidence is the evidence we have tonight.
So just as a reminder, we're not allowed to take additional testimony. Right. So even what the conversations we may have with the appellant, well, that doesn't count.
This is it.
This is
So, be clear, any decision we make will apply all equally and evenly to all properties.
except for
Except
maybe
Except for
Charlie.
Charlie.
Right.
Although, well, actually, no, I'm thinking about that and thinking that they have given us the income and expenses for each property, and one of their arguments is you're continuing to argue that the city's method of figuring out the income approach is not accurate. So we do need to evaluate that separately for each property.
Right,
That would be appropriate to do that.
if we accepted their argument on income and expenses, then we would need to have an individual determination based on that argument for each property. Formula.
That's tax bill.
Did you say anything louder, Todd?
And say, if we're gonna do that, you need a formula for the figure. You pay, you know, comes out, you be, state with it. You would need to. Pay that. For the property. But if we accept. Taxpayers' statement of income. You have to apply it to the city's methodology.
Well, they provided their argument for what that methodology.
I think that, yeah, the assessor's methodology is in the
On
packet.
this, on each of these pages, these two boxes at the bottom. Are what they think it should lead to. I think. That's correct. Okay. Got
Is it possible for the group as a whole to decide that you're going to support the city's way, manner of doing revenue and income if in court, and that none of us change that, that doesn't just say we accept the city's findings on approach to income and expenses until the court tells us otherwise, and then we don't have to get into that. It's a
Right.
huge amount of time to understand this, we did it last time, it's huge.
yes, we can decide that. After the. What?
After the inspection.
After the inspection, so after the report, yep.
Well, just, I mean, whether then to have, they spend time on it now, if within our report, we use that.
Oh, I wonder if it's a finger process, but typically the inspection committee goes out. And then does a report back. And that report is what the group votes to accept or not to accept. But it seems like we need to have some additional deliberation. Afterwards, and I wonder about whether we can modify a process to go help with that deliberation with her. Then, right, well.
Well, strictly speaking, when we come back, the hearings will still be open. So theoretically, the hearings could be closed, or we could recess again. You know, you just keep recessing and having the discussion until we can. And, you know, the reports could be, you know, decide. Everybody wants an individual report, then we can recess to do that and still come back. We could keep coming back, but 30 days is stopped because we're not closing the hearings. So we can take as much time as we want to come in and out of the process. They shall report to the board. Yes.
It's always been written.
And then, but it just says report, it doesn't. say
It
what-
does just report, doesn't it?
Well, and that's because it goes out to before the meeting, so we can look at it.
Typically, yeah.
So maybe to say, we expect it. Yes, that could be how we do it. We can reconvene. Have the conversation about the agreement, you know, the question of the flood risk and the pathway, et cetera.
Not all towns in their reports include a recommendation. That's something we usually do, but we don't have to do that. So yeah, the report can. Exactly what you're saying. Looks like it just says report.
Yeah.
Boy, all the hours I've spent writing reports.
But then would be, everyone, we will have to. Right.
Ultimately, it's not written, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what the report typically is, but in this case, we want to write it to.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, or a report.
There we go.
And we can
Ron,
see it.
okay, Ron,
It's a little moment. This way. What's the city's position on? The various states. At the first. See. Yeah.
You want to repeat the question from the phone here?
Here, I'm trying to understand we have before us this very nice, easy to read, chart. So the first page on 54 Main Street, for example, the city estimates gross income be 160,000. And the applicant, the taxpayer says actuality, it's 112.4. So I'm saying the city saying that's just wrong.
So the city's position is that, whatever mass appraisal was done, it's done by the clean numbers that I spoke about before, surveys sent out, this is the way it's done throughout the state. It's not actual income and expense, the actual numbers come in, they are clean, they are, let's say, average for whatever the typical numbers are, and then applied. So the actual and the statement and the city's numbers are going to be different, yes.
But
You're not challenging their statement of what the actual is.
you're not disputing the factual accuracy of this.
So part two of my question is, so this all started with the proposition that the market has just changed as a result of the flood. But these numbers don't reflect that. These numbers simply say this is what our income is, and then 10 times the cap rate, this is what it should be. They got to, yeah, just looking at this one, they got to 584.7 without any discussion of what the market would do or wouldn't do. They're simply looking at that from their perspective.
Right, but their actual numbers and books are private.
But they would share them.
But they're giving us numbers, but can't verify this.
Well, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, there's two different arguments here. One is the world of Montpelier property has changed since 2023. And the other is, you've just got the numbers, we are just disagreeing on what the income is and what the expenses are for the vacancy. Those are really two different. And so they're arguing roughly 40 to 50% adjustment. They're saying because of the market, but it's actually because of the numbers.
Well, they're making two
more.
different arguments.
They're approaching. Correct.
Yeah.
Donna, were you?
Just maybe to Ron, before, it wasn't part of it last time around when this came up, and hence it's in the courts. It is two very different approaches. And that's where the conflict is, and that's why it's in the court, is whether you go and accept what they say are real numbers. And if you accept that, then do you need to see the books? How deep do you have to go? Or do you accept what the city uses for all the buildings, but this property too? To me, that's what is being appealed in courts, yes.
I think you around to what
So-
we did
so-
before the.
So that's why I brought out that we accept that we're not going to get into it, because it is in the courts. Whereas the part about the flood and risk, change in the environment of market price, to me, that's what the real argument is that's pertinent now, because it's not in the courts.
I hear you.
But we can't make that as a general, so it's just part of our discussion until we do our inspections.
So. Assuming that we're getting get some legal advice. And we're going to have a further decision on how to proceed within a week. Probably by getting notice out to all the members of the board and all the parties. Does anyone have anything else that we need to talk about before? I definitely want to make sure the taxpayer gets to say everything we need to say.
I just want to remind the board that obviously we're providing you these income and expense statements as to be used in your deliberations, but would ask that they obviously not be dispersed or distributed outside the context of the hearing and be kept confidential. Thank you.
Yeah, and I remember that was a question last time. If it would seem to be a public record, and is there an exception with public records law that would make it otherwise?
I believe so. I mean, I believe when you submit, income and expense materials to the assessor and to the board that they can't release that information to identify and to, to identify to a specific property. But, I mean, we just want to make sure, obviously, if somebody comes in to the city and asks for a public records request, then the city has to decide. But what I'm just asking is these not be distributed beyond what we need for this hearing.
Can we do that?
That's what came up before.
That the question is, can we
Yes,
do that?
national.
Or are we bound by law to turn them over to somebody? who wants
There's
it?
a difference between if somebody asks for a public records request for the material, then the committee members going home and handing this out to a friend and saying, hey, here, look at this info, right? I mean, that's the difference.
You
Yeah, Mayor.
don't need to make a public records request as a member of the public to say, may I please see the materials
Right.
that were given in an open meeting.
Right.
I mean, so if somebody, if came to the city. and
If they said
"May I
that,
see
then I
this?"
assume
Yeah.
you would talk to your counsel as to whether they're protected or not. I'm just asking,
For a courtesy.
well, more than a,
I think that we decided that they were protected last time.
yeah, I mean, how, I mean, hopefully that somebody wouldn't be handing materials out like this beyond your need for your review here.
But this is,
You know,
this is
you
a good
could-
example of why the city uses
Right.
clean numbers. This is supposed to be one.
Jen, could you, if you're asking the question about how we do it, mainly. How do we do the inspection?
Put that
you
question
also
into it
find
also,
out.
yeah.
You wanna just talk to Mike Lord? Yeah.
Isn't it a special meeting?
So that is the way to-
Wherever it's five and keep them confidential to contact you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Special meeting.
I guess I don't remember, but I remember that that was part of the.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I'm not inviting these for everyone to have access.
I would definitely want to do that. If we're told we're able to do that.
well, okay.
But.
And if you're
when
told you're
also-
not, I mean, we would ask, I mean, I would then in the future have a very difficult time asking clients to provide any
Yeah.
financial information to any board if they thought that the board members could then distribute them at will.
Oh,
I mean, that really,
Well, at least for agents, all of their financial information is included in the record, which is posted on the internet, so it's pretty vulnerable information.
yeah. Generally income records. We expect that.
It's really.
well, I let me just say, I've done this for 40 years and I've been in front of 25 different municipalities, and I've never had municipalities say that they would not keep information confidential, but you can decide for your own city, and that would be quite discouraging for the future.
From my perspective, I think I'd be happy to. The question is just legally, can we say no?
Yeah.
That's
No,
me.
there-
And I
there's
know
different,
the individuals not giving it out, I appreciate that.
right.
But I think at the end of the day, it could be a distinction without a difference if somebody wants it.
If somebody wants to come and file a request, then you can, then your council will make a determination whether that's disclosable. That's different than question than whether the board members can distribute the information that's here, that's been submitted to them, as part of the board.
Yeah, I understand that.
If
This video available?
Yeah, it's being listened to, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's what I.
Yeah, okay, we'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah, let's find out.
we'd certainly appreciate the courtesy
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
keeping the information.
Definitely, I totally agree with that, yeah. So I'll follow up with our council, we'll get word out to everybody within a week.
We're gonna sign.
You wanna assign?
Yeah, then if we need to, walk in, look around.
Okay. Just going down the list.
Well, can I suggest that for scheduling purposes, we break up into groups of three, and we really pull a couple, so that we're not trying to work with different groups of three for every outreach.
We've got, now that Carrie's here, she doesn't count, but there's 5 other shifts people will take. Val will take 1, Tom and Ben will each take 2. So we can put them in there somehow as well, unless we just want to put them all on.
We'll put them on one team, and they all get one.
Or 5. Yeah,
Let's do that.
3,
No, how many?
in the
inspectors
BCA,
You have to work.
theoretically, what is it, 15 plus 7 plus 1?
Commented that they're available.
Well, I've got an additional 4 here.
So us plus 4.
Well, us plus 3, plus Carrie's.
Right.
Yeah, right. Us plus 3.
So, which is, oh.
given what they are, I'm sorry, you can just give 3 properties to one inspection group, they're right there in the road. Yeah, we're done.
Right.
Yeah.
This is just,
Yeah.
you can do this with 3, 4, 6.
Yeah. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Did you count me?
No, that was what the waving was too.
Bond, sell, and.
Well, you are part of it. It's not like they do it. You are.
No, yeah, I
just
have to watch the recording before I go.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, so Mary, Elaine and Carrie. Next group.
And you work with Judy, do the two.
Then Donna, Sarah and Jude.
Yep.
Rosie.
Yeah, you are not being.
I'm headed to be interested.
So, yeah, thing is they're going to do different amounts. Tom and Ben will each take 2 and Val will take 1. So we could just say Tom, Ben, and Val, and just give you 1. Oh, you're not on any. Oh.
That hardly seems fair.
Oh, that's emergency, that's so right.
Well, I was my volunteer, right? So if you all wanna do the inspections,
Well, you want to do 2 of them then with Tom and Ben?
No, take her out.
No, I don't worry about that.
Well, that's good, because I was also thinking, I would like to be doing that, so.
I was.
Ready on the decision, so.
Yeah, but they were not.
you wanna,
Well, between the 2 of us, we
we,
would.
right, yeah, okay, that would work.
Okay, now it's time. All right. Now that we know what we take.
Well, except for the folks who are here. Why don't we give them 1? Tom, Ben, and Val.
Well.
Yeah. So really, I think
No,
we'll give it
can
to
we
you.
know what we put her in this here?
I think, isn't this
Okay,
was
packets,
the most
order,
expensive?
can we do the order?
It's 11, right? It's 11.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
I think
Let's
this one.
do it on,
this pay
all we
report
have
makes
on the
the most
agenda.
sense.
Let's
Yeah.
go.
Is this one?
I think it's the same. isn't it?
I don't know. I didn't
That's the
read
same.
your agenda.
It came out separate.
Packet.
No, it came out separate.
No, we don't have the agenda.
Emailed it to you, but I didn't print that.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Which sheet are you on? This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, you wanna just define them?
yeah. So, group 1, which is Ron, Jack, and Sal, will do A, B, and C. 5 to 7 State Street, 26 to 42 State Street, and 41 to 45 Street. Okay,
We're not gonna do anything until we hear back.
you hear back from them. Group 2, which is Mary, Elaine. Sorry, you okay, John?
Yeah.
Group 2 will do D, E, and F, which is 28 Main Street, 4550 Main Street, and 54 Main Street. Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Group 3, which is Donna, Sarah, and Julie,
I'm mostly,
will do
I'll be done from.
139 Main Street,
13th of September.
15 Berry Street,
I know.
and 4
I
Lang.
think- I think- Yeah, I think other than next week,
And then
about 2 days next week,
Group
I'm out.
4, which is Con, Ben, and Val.
Have somebody else on my.
Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
2 to 4 Spring Street and 70 Main Street.
I have 95. 98. Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be educational.
98.
Oh.
Anyone who wants to hear, ask people who. Well, are we set on what we're doing? I think
You in my phone.
we're recessing. We are recessing until call back to order.
Yeah.
Once we have information for our council. I should, probably. That'll be a memo from the.
Oh, got it.
It's always a part of.
No, I definitely, okay, I will.
All right, everybody, at this point, we are in recess.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Again, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.